lot happened in this episode with Charlie. We got to learn his backstory, and a lot also happened with Dash, the CFer. And then besides that, there's the whole three-way thing happening. Three-way. No, triangle, not three-way. So we open up with Jordy is talking to the social worker about transitioning into adulthood. And while I appreciate that they did bring this up, I was a little bit frustrated at the fact they kind of made it like this transition from adulthood wasn't being taken very seriously for kids with chronic illness or genetic illness, or just out of the blue illness like cancer, or if you've lived your whole life without it and then all of a sudden you had it. Transitioning from being a teenager to adult is incredibly challenging. Imagine having to deal with insurance, which is insanely hard, and especially if you're someone who needs new organs like me and Dash in the show. You have to look, when you're looking at colleges, you have to look at all the colleges that you want and all the transplant centers you want and kind of cross-reference those and find, because you have to be within 4 hours of a transplant center, so you have to figure out, so many things, and it is a daunting task and really serious for a lot of kids with chronic illness. And it's actually when the highest death rates happen are in this transition phase, because kids don't know how to take care of themselves on their own. It's a really big deal, and so I think that just brushing it off with like, oh, Jordy gets a new car, adulthood is fun. I mean, as much as I kind of like that, I think that they should have given it more depth. Oh, we got to hear a little bit more about Dash, which I was very excited. I kind of dig Dash, not just because he has CF, although that's a big part. So Dash is on the lung transplant list, and Kara's trying to get on the transplant list, and so she's trying to help him out with something so he can give her the in on being on the transplant list, which there is no in. You can't work your way up to the top by being a good socializer and all of that. But I do really like the fact that Dash says it's not just for the people who evaluate you to get organs, that it's not just about how much you need the organ, it's about how well you're going to take care of it. And that's very true. Like, if you look at it on college, like let's think college terms. Okay, so the equivalent of your grades and your GPA is your health and your lung function and all of that, and how much you need the organ. On top of that, the more important thing is your personality. What do you do outside of school? What kind of clubs? Are you a good socializer? Are you a leader in your community, right? That's what colleges look for. Same with the transplant list. They look, are you in charge of your own illness? Are you doing things extra to take care of yourself? Can you communicate properly with doctors? All of that stuff. That's just as big as your health. So that was very cool that they put that in. And I also really love the fact that Dash was talking at the end about death and transplant and how it's not a fix-all. A lot of people like to think that transplant is like the solution to everything when you have an illness, especially CF. I remember being younger and everyone would always be like, oh, well, when you get your transplant, things will be better. Or when you get your transplant, you can go hike Mount Everest. And that's not true. That's very inaccurate. And so I like that they really put that in there, because it's not a fix-all. It's prolonging your life, 10, 11 years max. It's not necessarily a solution, and there's a lot, it's kind of like trading one illness for another. And so you really have to outweigh the pros and cons, and I like that he's okay with death. I think that that's a big deal. Okay, another thing just bugged me, just a really stupid thing, but Nurse Brittany is giving Dash treatments, and let me just say, nurses don't give breathing treatments to CFers or anyone if you have any respiratory issue. That's not done by the nurses, that is done by respiratory therapists, and I'm sick and tired of respiratory therapists not getting any credit for anything. Also, x-ray technicians never get any credit. They're the people that do x-rays and ultrasounds and all of that. It's always the doctor doing it. Doctors probably forgotten how to do it since they've been out of med school. So, biggest part of this episode that I really want to talk about, Charlie has been in a coma for a long time, I can't remember exactly how long, and the people who are coming around to kind of evaluate him say that he should be moved to a permanent facility for people who are in comas, where they're not trying to get him better, they're just trying to sustain him. They kind of portray these people who are evaluating him to leave as the bad guys, and they're mad at the doctor for being like, there's not much we can do, he should be transferred and all of that. But I'm gonna have to agree with these bad guys and with the doctor, because I don't know how to put this without sounding kind of cruel, but I've spent my fair share in pediatric intensive care units and regular intensive care units and just in the hospital in general. Here's the thing, when you're in a coma, a lot of the times after a certain point, it stops becoming about hope for the patient and it starts becoming selfish to keep them alive, to keep them in this state of, keep them like vegetables just hooked up to monitors. A lot of the time, hope can be more dangerous than it is beneficial to anyone because you're keeping people alive in this state of vegetation so that we don't have to let go. But a lot of the times, the other person in the coma has already let go. Now, that all being said, there is the other side of it, which is what I went through. I was in a coma for a while and I had a 1% chance of surviving. And I was on an oscillator, which is like a ventilator on steroids. And no one with cystic fibrosis had ever been on an oscillator and come off alive. So obviously when I went in, everyone was kind of like, we're going to start saying your goodbyes, and my parents really had to think, how long do we want her to be on life support before we cut it off, They really did have to think about, when are we doing this for our own selfish gain, and when is this beneficial to Claire? And then I came out of it. So it's really hard to say when hope is good and when hope is dangerous. So I'm happy that they covered that subject. I think that there's a lot to that. I might make a separate video on that because it's a really big deal when you're in the hospitals. Yeah, so anyway, I'll make another updates video soon. And yeah. Oh, subscribe. Yeah.